Hello, folks. My name is Mick, and this is another edition of SHU Outdoors. And I thought in this episode, we discuss race relations, politics, and how race relations actually work at a United States penitentiary. Okay, not the lower levels or not the lower security levels, but the basic rundown of how things are going to work. So, let's say you get a federal charge. The two things are going to happen. You're going to be held unless you somehow get bail, which is, kind of fishy. Usually feds don't give bail. You're going to be held in custody. If they got enough to indict you, the judge is going to co-sign it. You're going to be held without bail in custody, waiting to see how your case plays out. Now, I guess a few people have gotten bail, and it's not 100% unheard of, but those aren't the kind of people who are going to end up in a United States penitentiary. Those are like campers who might get bail or something, right? So you're going to be held in two places. One is a county jail that holds federal prisoners, who contracts with the United States Marshals and holds federal prisoners while their case is playing out. And number two place you could be potentially held if you're in a big metropolitan city is an MCC or an MDC. These are like county jails for federal prisoners whose case is playing out, and when that plays out, then you'll be processed into the actual Federal Bureau of Prisons. Okay. Now, interesting side note: if you're held in a MCC or an MDC, you're in federal custody from the very beginning. Now, just because you get arrested by the feds doesn't necessarily mean you'll quote unquote be in federal custody from the beginning. You'll be remanded to the United States Marshals, and they may drop you off in any number of county jails where you could wait for months, or get transferred to another county jail and have to wait months, depending on what the U.S. Marshals have going on. So when you get sentenced, you ain't going to be able to take none of your property with you. They may not even want you to take your legal mail, but maybe you can take that. But radios and sneakers and other gear you buy, you're not going to be able to actually take with you to the Federal Bureau of Prisons if you fight your case from a county jail. Now, again, if you're in an MCC or MDC, and they're all located in major cities, there's probably about 10 or 12 of them around the country, you will actually be in Federal Bureau of Prison custody from the beginning. And that's what happened with me. I was in MCC Manhattan for about 13 and a half months or so while my case played out, and then I got processed into the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons. What's wrong with you over there? Why are you so vocal? That's my cat, chilling out, doing the things he does. Oh, I hope I didn't invite him over here. He'd probably try to knock my camera over walking around. So see how that plays. So now you're in the BOP. Now, you got different levels of federal prisons. You do have something called Club Fed, i.e. a nice federal prison that's chilled and nonviolent and relaxed. And that's going to be camps, first-time offenders, nonviolent offenders, doctors who wrote bad scripts, attorneys involved in embezzlement or whatever else they got going on, accountants who embezzled stuff, maybe a few first-time offenders for like drug cases or something, but it's going to all be nonviolent, usually first-time offender type of stuff. 10 years or less, and then it keeps going from there. You got the lows. Then you got what is called FCIs, Federal Correctional Institutions. And then you have the last stop for the worst bunch, which is the United States Penitentiary System. So let's say you're coming out of one of these county jails, or you come out of an MCC or MDC, you're sentenced now, you're actually going into the federal prison system. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, the FBOP, also known as the BOP. So when you get into This is my little best buddy right here, man. Oh, he's such a cool little buddy of mine. Oh, his name is Felony, and his sister's name is Misdemeanor. All right, so you get sucked into the BOP, and depending on where they're going to send you, like, so when I got sentenced, they sent me from MCC Manhattan, which is also where Jeffrey Epstein was unalived himself, and since then they've closed that down. That's downtown Manhattan, very close to Wall Street, and a project is across the street, Smith House Projects, and it's on the Lower East Side, right there where the Lower East Side kind of putters out and turns into Chinatown, and where like 2 or 3 neighborhoods meet, right downtown Manhattan, like really far downtown Manhattan. So I did like 13 months there. Then they sent me to Brooklyn, because Brooklyn is a classification and designation center for the Northeast, generally speaking. So if you're from New England, or if you're from New York City or upstate New York, once you get sentenced and the marshals come and get you and decide to process you in to the BOP proper, they'll probably send you through Brooklyn, New York, and you'll be classified and designated there. Okay, so you'll find out usually where you're going there. Your counselor will tell you, or whatever, and so you know what awaits you, or maybe you think you have an idea of what awaits you. But during the course of this video, I'm going to break down exactly what awaits you if you find yourself in a federal situation where you have a federal sentence and now you're getting ready to enter into the Federal Bureau of Prisons proper. So you're going to go to wherever you're going to go. You're going to get dispersed, and when you get there, and this is what's going to happen if you land in the United States penitentiary. Okay, so whatever your race is, okay, because there, I didn't make these rules. Don't get mad at the messenger. I'm just telling you the way things actually play out. So when you first get there, whatever your race is, so, you're going to get to wherever you're going and processing. The yard's going to be out, usually when you go out, so there'll be people in the yard and there's sidewalks on either side. So you got 2 types of people who's going to be moving around. People who are fresh into the system, i.e. people who just got sentenced and are coming into the BOP proper for the first time, like actually on an active penitentiary yard. And then you got people that are transferring from jail to jail for whatever reason. They got in trouble, etc., so on. The list goes on. So when you get out there, your people, i.e. your race, whatever race you are, whatever race you identify as, your people is going to come to you immediately. All right. So if you're white, what's up, Wood? And if you're black or Hispanic, Mexican, etc. So for purposes of this right here conversation, I need to keep the focus on how it is for white dudes. Now, during the course of these videos, man, I'm going to go my way to never drop names or, never, expose something that's not necessary, because I'm not here to assist in any investigations, or I may speak on things in general terms, but never drop names and stuff like that, because that's not my goal here. So your people is going to come to you. Now let's just hypothetically, and that's just the way it is. So you're going to basically be in a position where you're going to roll with your race. So let's say you're a black dude and you're out of New York, all right? So when you first get to any United States penitentiary, the black dudes are going to come over to you right away as soon as you walk down the sidewalk, or they're going to holler at you through the fence in the yard, or if everybody's in the unit because they're not running yard right now when you go in, as soon as you come to the door, a whole bunch of black dudes are going to come over to you. and they don't know where you're coming from. So you're just a black dude coming to the door, and you're their people, and they're gonna come over to you and be like, "Yo, what's up, homie?" etc. And they'll be like, "Yo, where you from?" Now, that is one of the most significant questions you would be asked at this point, because what happens is this right here: where you from dictates usually what cell you're gonna live in, because you're gonna be in a cell. Usually, it's not rock solid 100% guaranteed you'll be in there right off the bat, one of your homies. But even if they assign you to the cell, you can go to the cop and be like, "Hey man, this is my homie, he's coming in the cell with me." Okay, so yeah, they assign cells. And, if you go in on a lockdown, you're going to be in whatever cell you're assigned to, because there's no room for maneuvering. But if the jail is up and running and you go into a cell block, the black dudes or the white dudes or the brown dudes are going to come right over to you. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of reasons for that. First, who are you? Where are you coming from? Where are you from? Who you run with? Because you could be beefing with a gang that's there, and your gang don't walk there, so they're coming over right away. "Yo, homie, where you from? Where you coming from?" Okay? Now, if you just transfer from one jail to another, that's easy to run down for them. Because they got homies in the jail probably you said you came from, so that can be accomplished with a little email, and they'll have an answer by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, and they'll know what you're all about, what you did over there at that jail. All right, whether if you left honorably or dishonorably, did you tell on people, did you check in? That's pretty easy to track down. But let's say you're first coming into the system, so that your people's going to come over to you and be like, "Hey man, what's up, where you," etc., etc. And they're not going to do it in necessarily an aggressive way, but this is a dangerous place that you're in, so it may not be hugs and pats on the back, but like, "What's up, man?" And then they go, "Oh, you from New York? Oh yeah, man, your homies is in here. You got a homie over here, a homie over here." So, you might be from the Bronx in New York, and your homie might be from Brooklyn and Queens or Staten Island or Manhattan or, Jersey City. That ain't New York, but it's right there on the other side of the Hudson River. So now your people, or you're going to usually have at least a homie or two, especially if you're anywhere in the Northeast and you're from New York City or Philly or Boston, etc. You're going to probably have at least a homie or two right there in the block with you. And if not, on the next rec run, you put your shit on the bunk, and on the next rec run, you go to the yard and you make it known. "Yeah, I'm from New York. This is what, bam." And so when you get up with your homies, that's who you're going to kick it with. You're not going to tell everybody what you are about and what you stand for and all that stuff when you first meet people. You're just going to be like, "Yeah, man, I'm from New York. I'm just coming into the system, man. Yeah, I'm just coming from MCC or MDC, New York, man. You bang?" So now this is another critical question, no matter what your race is. So they're going to be like, "You bang?" And, that's kind of like a check, because unless you have word that your people are there, you might be going into that situation blind. So it could be a whole bunch of Bloods talking to you, a whole bunch of Crips, or a whole bunch of GDs, and maybe you got beef with them dudes, or maybe they're Bloods and you whatever. So they're just going to ask you, "You bang?" And maybe they'll ask you that right up front, or maybe if you got people in that block who are respected, they're going to shout you out to your people, because they already know what your people are, and they know if you ain't in tune with your people, your ass is out there anyway. So more likely, "Oh, you're from New York? Yo, yeah. Yo, you bang? Yo, yeah." By then, they probably done notified your people if they're in the block and they're coming over to you. Yo, one of your homies is here, dog. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way that's going to play out. Same thing, whether if you're white or Mexican, it's going to be the same thing. White dude's going to come over to me. "Yo, what's up, Wood? Where you from, man? Where you coming from?" Okay, and then the conversation plays from there. Or that's the way it's going to play out. In the same way, if you're Mexican. Now, let me put a caveat on this, right? You've heard probably different channels how people talk about, "Yeah, I'm a white dude, but I ran Sereno," or "I'm a white dude, I ran Norteño," or "I'm a white dude, but I ran with the Mexicans from Texas." And this type of stuff does happen, but it's not super widespread. Okay, that's number one. I just want to make sure, clarify that. And there's a number of reasons for that, right? So let's just say hypothetically, I'm from the East Coast. I'm a southern white man from the East Coast. Okay, but let's just say hypothetically, okay, a person, a white guy with a white mother and a white father who is biologically white, grew up in East LA or another heavily Hispanic populated neighborhood. All right, he grew up in that neighborhood. He runs with Hispanics, okay? They know him or know of him and they accept him, all right? So he, for all practical purposes, grew up around Southsiders or Norteños, or they're, and the biggest thing is they accept him as one of theirs, okay? So when you come in a situation like that, and if you're in that world, you already know all this, but let's just say hypothetically for the sake of just slap rap conversation, you wouldn't know, okay? So what that individual would say right off to the white dudes, and you don't have to be, it's not going to be a disrespect thing, it's not going to be a big thing whatsoever, but you have one chance to do it and do it right and solve the problem immediately up front. Be like, yeah, man, they're going to come, what's up, Wood? What's up, man? This and that next thing. And you're going to be like, yo, man, I'm going to keep it real with y'all. I am a white man, all right? But I was raised in East LA or Northern California or Brownsville, Texas or whatever, and I run with the Mexicans, all right? Or potentially you're a blood or Crip if you was a white dude and you're from Detroit or Chicago, wherever you're from, and you grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and that's where you went to school, and you know these people, and they accept you as one of theirs. That's the main number one thing right there. Not just what you want to do, but what other people are willing to let you do, and how they see you, and how they accept you. So you would just right from the beginning, okay? You know, it'd be like, hey, man, yeah, where you from, Wood? What you up to? Well, man, yo, my name is so-and-so, and I'm from Detroit, and I am a white man, okay, and but I'm from Detroit or Chicago or LA or Miami or wherever you're from, man, Texas, wherever, and be like, yeah, man, but I run with the blacks, man. That's my people, man. That's where I grew up. Yeah, I'm blood, or I'm a Crip, or I'm a GD, or whatever your flavor is. Now what's gonna happen is they're gonna be like, oh yeah, okay, and then they're gonna go over there and get the GDs or the Bloods or wherever you from, and they're gonna be like, oh, that's your people over there, and then they're gonna go over to some blacks or whatever. At that point, if they know who, let's say you claiming to be I'm just gonna use a general term like a Crip from Chicago, okay, or a GD from Chicago. Chances are, there's probably going to be a GD from the North Midwest area in that unit or next door or whatever. But if he ain't there, one of his homies is going to be there. So the white dude's going to be like, oh yeah, okay. And this is like your first chance and your really only chance to do it clean and neat and efficient. You don't have to be disrespectful, and they're not going to be disrespectful to you. In like a abrasive way. They're just gonna be like, oh yeah, okay, and then they're gonna holler at somebody, some black dudes and shit, who's gonna come over and talk to your ass, or Mexican dudes, or wherever you claim to be from. Now, usually that would never happen. Or if you run with the natives, let's say you're a white dude, but you was born and raised on the res, and you run with the natives. I mean, that has happened. It's not the norm by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and those are legitimate situations, and they accept him, okay? Now, the reason why this is so important, especially in a federal penitentiary, these rules was put in place long before I ever got there, and they're still in place now, and that's just the way it is. Because everything is a two-man bunk, and every cell has two bunks in it, all right? And it's not like the state in the U.S. penitentiaries where you come off the line and you sit in the next available seat and the cop tells you where to sit. And you sit there, then they tell you when to get up and all this other stuff, right? The feds is a completely different ballgame. Now, what happens is, because everything is a double bunk, it's either a white cell, a black cell, or a brown cell, and maybe some other cells. You know what I'm saying? If there's any others in there, enough for them to bunk up and have their own thing going on. So you're going to be in a cell with another white guy, or a black guy, or a brown guy, respectively. You know what I mean? So then they're going to put you in a cell with your own race if you go to a U.S. penitentiary. If you go to the lower securities, they might have a different program there. I don't know what's going on there, but I do know in the United States penitentiary, they're never going to put you in outside of your race. Now, there is one exception to that, because whites and Mexicans, even though they're totally different, you know, sets and crews, and they're doing their own thing, way back, the brand, also the original Aryan Brotherhood and the Emmy, both out of the state of California, way back in the day, they had an alliance where, and the alliance is still in place to this day, all right, that if one or the other had a beef with the blacks, they would come together and fight the blacks together as a team in most circumstances, all right? That gave them the superior numbers and the superior manpower to fight the blacks and have a good chance of winning, all right? So that's how the loose alliance is based. So I say that to say this. That doesn't mean they're doing the same thing in their day-to-day activities or nothing like that. But in that one unique circumstance, they have an alliance, all right? A loose alliance, but it's still pretty much in place today in the federal penitentiary system, and obviously in the federal and California prison system. Things could have changed out there now. I've never been in that system, but I've talked to quote-unquote a lot of number of big homies, you know what I'm saying, of different organizations from the California system, you know what I mean? And I pretty am aware exactly more or less how it runs, even though I've never been there, because the federal penitentiary system is kind of based on that system. I mean, that's just what it is. It's kind of like a mix between Texas and California. And maybe I'll get into that on another video, how the yards are broke up in between states and stuff like that. But so you could do that as a white guy, okay? Now, once that comes out of your mouth and you're no longer white business, yeah, you're biologically a white man, but that's where the similarities end. You've made the choice to run with another race, and you have a right to do that if they accept you. But once that comes out of your mouth, most white dudes ain't going to never accept you again in their clique, because you done identified as running with another organization, another racial organization. That's just the way it is. I didn't make these rules. I'm just telling you the facts of life, okay? This is what's up. So you have several white gangs in federal prison. Several. Okay? You have, obviously, excuse me, pardon me. So you have the obvious suspect, which is the original Aryan Brotherhood out of the state of California, also known as the Brand. Okay? Now, interesting side notes, that name is very easy to respect. A lot of the guys, I mean, 50, and there's not a lot of them walking yards, but they don't need to be a lot of them. A little bit goes a long way. They're not always the easiest guys to like. The name itself and what they were able to do makes them kind of iconic. Their name and their brand kind of iconic. But there's a reason why all these other states have Aryan Brotherhood, Arizona, Aryan Brotherhood, Ohio, Aryan Brotherhood, any number of different states, Aryan Brotherhood, Texas, because that name carries significant weight because of what them dudes was able to do for the white race, okay? And I'm just telling you that real history and what's up, okay? Way back in the day, the feds decided to lock all of them down, and they attempted to put a real stranglehold on that organization, and they did to a degree, but once that cat's out of the bag, it's out of the bag. And when they did that, they created this power vacuum where all these other gangs grew out of it, okay? So, because there was, always a need for leadership, good, efficient, quality leadership, because it helps keep things between the rails. And it may not always be successful, but that's the reason why it exists, and that's just what it is. So you're going to be in a cell with your own race, and you're going to eat at a table where only white people eat, or only black people eat, or only brown people eat, or only native people eat, okay? Or a table for others, like islanders and stuff like that. So it's you're gonna come off the line and then go over whatever table you sit in, and you can get up and go over here and talk to this guy, the warden and the AW, and a whole bunch of cops is up there every lunchtime at Mainline, and you can go up there to complain about something. They may listen to you, they may not, but they're there. And so at lunchtime you have to put on your official uniform. Some places have more relaxed rules when it comes to going to breakfast in the morning. A lot of times you can just go with your sweats and stuff on. Some places make you put your khakis on. So this is the world you're in now, okay? So what happens after that? So basically you have 30 days to get your paperwork here. And what kind of paperwork are they looking for? They're looking for your sentencing minutes, hopefully your docket sheet, which is going to tell everything you went to court for in your case, your rap sheet, which is going to tell about prior convictions in different states and exactly what you were sentenced for, what kind of time you got, if there was any deals made. They're looking for your official criminal history. They want to know who you're dealing with, what this dude's all about, what kind of prior incidents has he had, how did he deal with them, etc. Did you tell on your certain case? Because you don't want nobody around you. You could potentially be doing some big boy things, and you don't want nobody around you who easily folds under pressure. So that's going to be paramount. That's going to be the first thing you need to worry about getting as soon as you get there. If you was in one of these county jails where they gave you a hard time bringing your legal work with you through, then you're going to have to write your lawyer, write to court, go see the counselor, and round up all these different papers so everybody can feel comfortable that you're not an informant, you didn't cooperate on your cases, you're not a woman beater, a kid beater, and a sort of S predator. You know what I mean? So these things are very important, right? Now, for the most part, the violence that occurs in there is contained within racial groups. So usually what happens, because you depend on your race and your race depends on you. And that's just the way it is, man, and there's just no way around it. Now, it'd be very unusual for any other race to ever be allowed to run with the white race in a federal penitentiary, okay? Now, let's say about how an exception could occur to that, okay? First of all, if you're a black dude, I'm just going to keep it 100 with you. You're never going to be accepted by the white dudes, and you're never going to be welcome in their circle, and that's just unfortunately the way it is in there. I didn't make these rules, I'm telling you the truth though. But let's say you're half Filipina, or maybe you're half Mexican or half Native, and your mom is white, okay, and you was raised by a white lady. Your whole family that you know and deal with is white, and maybe you don't really look 100% white, but you're basically white, but not really. You know what I mean? But kinda, okay? So let's just say you identified as being white. The white dudes, they may accept you or they may not, and that has a lot of factors and embedded in it. But the honest the truth is, to keep it 100 with you, it probably is a bad idea, because the first time you do any other thing they don't like, the first thing they're going to say, oh, this dude ain't even white. Why is he even hanging around us? And because you done said you ran with the whites, even if you are mixed race, now you're what is considered white business. The other races are not getting involved with what you got going on between you and your crew. All right? Even if you are a mixed race, because you said, okay, I ran with the whites, you took a whites care package, you moved into the cell with a white dude, you eat with the whites, now you're officially white business. Yeah, you may have some Mexican or Filipina or whatever else you got in you, but for all practical purposes, that don't matter no more. And it's the same thing with the few rare exceptions where whites are accepted by the blacks or the Mexicans, and that does happen, but that only happens if they agree that you're like one of them, you know what I mean? And then you're not white business no more. Yeah, you're biologically a white man, but for all practical purposes, you're black or Hispanic as far as the general white population is concerned, okay? Doesn't mean they won't talk to you. It doesn't mean they won't do business with you. It doesn't mean they necessarily hate you. But you're on that side of the line and we're on this side of the line. If some shit goes down, we already know which way you're going to roll. So you really, yeah, you're white, but you're a potential enemy around any corner. So yeah, that's the way that's going to go down. And that's just what it is. Again, I didn't make these rules. I'm just telling you the way it is, okay? So, you know, and again, most of the violence in there that is perpetrating is blacks hurting other black people, it's whites hurting other white people, it's Mexicans hurting other Mexican people, all right? So that's where a lot of these violent incidents occur from. Not exclusively. Occasionally you could have a race right. It depends on who's in the jail and how they roll it and who's kind of most influential in how they're doing things. You know what I mean? You know, pro tip, if you're around a bunch of serious people, the last thing you ever want to do is start talking about how tough you are and how you do this and that, because you know what's going to happen? They're going to be like, oh man, you're just the guy we've been looking for. Here, take this shank and go put it in this fool over here. Okay, that's what we need you for. Okay. And now your card is, they pulled your card, but like in a cool way. You know, most of the most serious, dangerous people I've ever met were not loud mouths, or not tough talkers, and actually a lot of them were really cool guys in their own weird way, you know. And so let's talk about, you know, some of the weapons that could potentially be used on you in federal prison, right? You see this right here? This right here may be a big deal in the county jail or whatever state you're from, etc. But in a federal penitentiary, they sell you these by the 10-pack on commissary. Nobody hardly ever uses these for a weapon, all right? Not saying it hasn't ever been done or it won't ever be done in the future, because, yeah, you could definitely get a weapon out of this. But that is not the weapon that would normally be used on you. They're everywhere in federal penitentiaries, right? And so really nobody's using them, you know, for a weapon necessarily. Okay, more likely what they're going to do is do this right here. Go get something like this, all right? Now, as you can see by that, you see how thin it is? You do a lot of damage with that. And it's thin enough where you can slide it into something and stash it real good. Now you can see this has rust on it. And this is not a prison shank. This is like a free world knife, but it's very similar. Obviously, you might not have that on it. Just might be a single blank cutout. And there's definitely ways to do it. I've been in prison cells where the bunk was like cut to pieces, and they didn't have to come in and weld new plates on it and stuff, you know. So to hold it together, right? Because so many knives has been cut out of it, and it's blank. So you hit some. The good thing about having something like this, right? It's easily to stash, push come to shove, you could wrap that up in a washcloth and potentially cheek it. Not shove it up your butthole, but just put it in between the cheeks of your, your butt. You know what I mean? And you could wrap that up, okay, and you could get it through potentially a place you might need to get it through, all right? And there's ways to cut it out of bunks, but you know what? I'm not going to share that information because I'm not here to assist law enforcement or correctional officers how to go about busting things. That's your job, not my job. You know what I mean? But these are easily cut out. Not easily. You can cut them out. And it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and you're probably going to need you and your cellie to do it. And it's not uncommon to hear people cutting shanks out in the middle of the night, out of their bunks or their lockers, okay? So again, you could stash this easily up under a bunk or up under any number of different things. And again, I don't want to give away all my stash spots because I don't want to put no ideas in no correctional officer's head. That's not what this channel is about. This right here is just telling you the way it is, okay? So I could stash that real easy, okay? Now I put a handle on it, but normally what I would do is it would just be a blank. It wouldn't have these two things on it. It'd be more blunt because I had to cut it out. So I'm not going to get intricate in the way I'm cutting it. You know what I'm saying? I want a knife, and so that's what I want to do. And it's easy to stash and it's easy to use, alternative to this would be something that's called a floater, and basically it'd be about the same thing, but it would have to be bigger and bulkier so it wouldn't break. And you can make those out of fiberglass, and there's ways to make those too, but I'm not going to share that information here on this channel. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, it's up to you to conduct your own investigation independent from this channel. And the reason why that could be very, very necessary is because when you come into housing units or you leave housing units in a maximum security prison, or if you go into certain hallways, you have to clear metal detectors. And basically what's happening is you don't have a cop in a U.S. penitentiary. I'm not going to say you don't have wands. They don't use wands occasionally, but usually what's going to happen is you're just going to walk through a metal detector. There's going to be a cop sitting there with a little table so you can take your watch off or anything that's going to ring, put it on there, walk through the metal detector, clear it, get your shit, and leave. Occasionally they may have another cop there who's patting people down randomly, not everybody. Hey, you get on the wall, hey, pat you down, you go on about your business. They don't find nothing. So a floater could be necessary if you think you're going to have beef in the yard or another area. You can take a piece of fiberglass, sharpen a good tip down. You make really good ones that'll do some damage. They're a floater. Yeah, they can get through a metal detector, but it's not like this piece of steel that I can probably work your ass real good with and it won't ever break. A floater could break after 3 or 4 or 5 pokes, and because it's made out of a polymer, not a piece of steel. All right. So those are probably going to be the 2 main weapons, and then you always got the old go-to lock on a rope, not a sock, because it'll probably bust out if it's just a sock. Maybe if you put 4 or 5 socks together, it'll work. So that's what the weaponry would look like, and you're going to be, and a lot of people have this type of weaponry. It's a very dangerous place, man. And I'm going to tell you, man, I did 10 years in the United States Penitentiary. I didn't do the whole 10 years. I did 9 years and change, 3 years supervised release, and 1 violation for smoking medical marijuana. That is the only thing that helps me with my PTSD, and now I'm off of probation and all that bullshit, so I can do it legally in the state of Florida. And I was doing it legally before with doctor orders, and they still violated me and sent me back to prison. That's been a number of years ago now. So things could have changed slightly, but not significantly, and all those things I just talked about, because that stuff is so ingrained that it's just, that's the way it is. You know what I mean? And I got beautiful tattoo work did in prison by one of my Native American homies. I'm a white guy. I've always ran white while I was in prison. It doesn't mean that you can't have certain other friends. Now, and sometimes you ain't going to be able to live in the cell with them, or, probably eat at the table they eat at the mess hall, but that don't mean you can't be friends with a guy, you know, from another race. It just means there's just certain limitations and barriers, and that's just the way it is, man. Things can be very militant in there, like some people roll their mattress up in the cell, and the reason why they do that is they want all their other homies to know, I'm not in here taking naps, I'm not in here doing none of that stuff. I sleep in designated times, and I get up when it's time and I need to be up. Why? Because of another white man, if you're whatever your race is, if they get jumped by another race and you're there, you better get in it, because if you don't, as soon as them gates roll, the other whites or the other blacks or the other brown people's coming for your ass. Basically what you say when you take that bedroll and you go in the yard, I'm a warrior, okay, and I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to ensure the existence of my race and have a right to live and exist. And if you don't meet up to that standard, there's going to be a problem. That's what you're saying. And when you go into a U.S. penitentiary, I don't know how it was back in the day, but when I was doing my time all over the country, I've been from coast to coast in the feds, white people in the U.S. penitentiary were maybe outnumbered, but not significantly. Not significantly. Yeah, still, probably, you know, outside of the others, probably the lowest, you know, number of a racial group. But what they make up, what they like in numbers, they make up for in viciousness, all right? So it's kind of well known in the federal penitentiary system that the white dudes go the hardest, and this is not like news break type of thing. I would say pound for pound, the Sureños are probably the most dangerous because they're so well organized and they have a clear chain of command. Where the white dudes, they're well organized. There's a caveat to that, though. You have a lot of different white gangs, and they don't fall up under one central leadership like, say, the Sureños are up under the Emmy, okay? And that's kind of who gives them their marching orders, okay? So when you get on the white side of things, yeah, you do have the brand, and things are kind of broke up between a Texas yard and a California yard. Maybe I'll cover that on another episode. But, and obviously the brand is going to be influential in any yard they walk on, okay? But that doesn't necessarily mean they're in charge of every other white gang or every other white crew that walks that yard. So it's different in that sense, but it's well understood. If you're white, you better going to be rolling for the white race. If any other white man gets jumped while you're around, you're getting in it and you're going, and that's it. And if you don't, the other white dudes are going to come for your ass when the lockdown's over, and you're going to become the mission. All right, so that's just the way it is. I hear a lot of people on these like YouTube channels talking about prison talk and stuff, and then when they start saying the I was in a low or an FCI, and I'm not saying those places are not real prisons and bad things don't happen there too, but it's a completely different vibe when you hit a United States penitentiary. You got a lot of white dudes walking there with big swastikas on their forehead, swastika back pieces, Adolf Hitler back pieces, true, you know, for lack of a better word, extremists in the extreme, okay? And, you know, they're not necessarily walking around yelling racial slurs at the top of their lungs. It don't really work like that, because now you're putting everybody in a bad situation. But it's not like they're keeping their racial beliefs and their politics like hush-hush. They don't really give a damn who knows it. This is what it is. This is what I'm standing on. You do you over there, I'm going to do me over here. And push come to shove, I shank your ass. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the vibe. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I just wanted to, you know, give you this little tidbit of information, and I hope you've found it informative. And if you have, I'd appreciate it if you think about hitting that like, subscribe, and if you know anyone else who enjoys this kind of content, hey, I'd appreciate it if you shared this video with them. Let's get this channel up and running, man. Let's get these paychecks coming in. Stay up. Peace.